Hi, welcome back to English 111 Online. This week we're going to actually write the rough draft for the rhetorical analysis essay. So for the past couple of weeks you've been looking at different pieces of writing and you have been finding the rhetorical devices that the author uses to try to make the point. And so we're going to continue to do that this week, and then you're going to write an essay about it instead of a journal the way you've been doing. So this week, you need to view this video as you are doing right now, review the assignment document for Core Project 1, Rhetorical Analysis Essay, choose one of the three reading selections from the assignment document. That's what you're going to write your essay on. Just choose one of them. And then look for three rhetorical devices that the author uses in order to make her point. And I can say her because all three of the authors this week, from the selections for this week, are female. Create a rough draft following the directions in a document called How to Write a Rhetorical Analysis Essay. Make sure you use MLA 8th edition formatting. We've covered that. If you need to scroll back to previous weeks and look at some of that to get that correct. But I've also created a sample essay in MLA format so that you can see the sample essay. What I did was I took the information from this past week's assignment on how to do gender and actually wrote a sample essay for you based on how to do gender. Your rough draft should be 2+ pages of text, not including your works cited page. So 2 pages, a little bit over onto the 3rd page. You want to view and follow the document on Core 1 Rhetorical Analysis Outline and Revision and apply the directions to your rough draft for major revisions. And I've gone through and I have just taken it from the hook at the very beginning of the essay all the way through to the conclusion of the essay and told you what needs to go in there. So compare your rough draft that you've written to that and make any major revisions that you need to do. Submit your rough draft on the Turnitin link to get my very general feedback. I'm going to look for thesis statement, body paragraphs with topic sentences and things like that. And those are the things that I'm going to point out to you. I'm not going to go into any kind of in-depth editing for you on your rough draft. And I will try to have, if you submit them on Sunday night, I will try to have the feedback to you by Wednesday night. Submit your rough draft to Smart Thinking. There's going to be a link here to submit on, and I'll show you that in just a moment. It takes about 48 hours to get their response. Sometimes they're quicker than that, but usually about 48 hours. And but I will ask for evidence of your smart thinking feedback next week because I'm not expecting you to get that done any sooner than your rough draft is due. And then submit or complete, trying to say them both at the same time, complete your inquisitive activities. Just be aware of the due dates on them when you pull your inquisitive up. 2 graded assignments this week, the inquisitive activities and the rough draft submission. So let's take a look at the document that we had about how to write a rhetorical analysis. So this is on your Moodle page. You can pull it up just like this. And this template that I'm giving you in how to write a rhetorical analysis is based on how to do gender. And as I said, I've also given you a sample essay of how to do gender. And so remember your assignment sheet says you're going to pick one of 3 possible readings. When should a child be taken from a parent, serving in Florida, and education attentional disarray. So just choose one of those and look for the rhetorical devices that you'll cover in your essay. Okay, remember your audience. is basically me, because I'm the one that's going to be reading your essay, but a classmate may read your essay. But you want to keep in mind, you want to write this for someone who has not read the article that you've read. So you want to give them enough explanation as you write, so that they'll understand what you are writing about. MLA format, Times New Roman, 12-point font, double line spacing. Header on the first page, insert the page number, and then add your last name before it. And then the heading only appears on the first page, and that would be your name, instructor name, course name, and the date that you began writing your essay. The title is centered on the very next line. It does not refer to the assignment, so do not title it Core Project 1. And it is not titled the same thing as the essay that you're reading. So if you're writing about serving in Florida, do not title your own essay Serving in Florida. But you can mention that in the name, in the title. Like for instance, in using How to Do Gender, I could have titled something Rhetorical Analysis of How to Do Gender. That would be perfectly fine. Remember that titles go in quotation marks. Or Establishing Pathos in How to Do Gender. Whatever you're going to title it, just make sure it's not the name of the essay you're writing about, and it's not Core Project 1, the essay that the assignment that you're doing. All right, in your introduction, you need a hook, something to draw the reader's attention. A rhetorical question would be something good to start with. An amazing fact would be something that you could start with. A quotation could be something that you start with. And remember that if you use the words directly from the text, in whatever it is you start with, then you need to put it in quotation marks, and you need to cite the author's last name and the page number. Once you do that once, all you'll need to do is insert page numbers, because the reader will be aware that you're writing about this one essay all the way through. But after you've hooked your reader, you need to create a summary. So I wrote this little summary of the one that I did here. According to the biographical information preceding their essay, Lisa Wade and Myra Marks Ferry demonstrate that gender roles are flexible, subject to culture, context, and even individual preference. They explain how our views of gender are influenced by American culture, how we learn the rules of gender, and how we sometimes break those rules. And notice that I inserted the page number after the quotation. Remember that in MLA format, you put your quotation marks, your parentheses, where you list the page numbers in between the parentheses, and then your end punctuation, the period. If you can remember quo, per, punc, that will help you to remember that. Quotation, parentheses, then your punctuation. And also notice in this sample that I gave you, anywhere I added something or changed something from the words that I actually copied out of the text, I put them in brackets. So anytime you change something, I added her first name. The text just said Wade and Ferry, and I added her name Lisa, so I put it in brackets. And then also Ferry didn't have her last name in, so I added in brackets Myra Marks. And this T here that I capitalized, I put that in brackets because in the text it was lowercase and part of a longer quotation. I left out some of that, so right here where I have the ellipsis mark, you put an ellipsis mark anytime that you leave out words. After you've gotten the hook, the summary, that takes you down to the thesis. Narrow your introduction down so that the last sentence is your thesis statement. That's the point of your essay and is supported by the body paragraphs. Your body paragraphs, you should have 2 to 3 of these. If you are only going to talk about 2 rhetorical devices, you'd have 2 body paragraphs, 1 for each rhetorical device. If you're going to talk about 3 or 4, you'd have 3 or 4 body paragraphs. So just a separate body paragraph for each one. And each, each body paragraph will start with a topic sentence that explicitly states what the rhetorical device is, whether you're using anecdote or fact or whatever it happens to be. And then you want to use a transition word at the beginning of the topic sentence to help guide your reader and remind him or her of the thesis statement. For example, one rhetorical device, there's a transition, the authors use is anecdote. The next thing you want to do is explain to your reader what an anecdote is. And then you want to, when you start your next body paragraph, you'll have another transition. Another rhetorical device that the authors use is historical fact, for example. Also remember that the topic sentence is supported by textual evidence. The textual evidence is always included in a quote sandwich where you're going to, I give you a quote sandwich here, introduce it with some signal phrase like according to, or the essay states, or the author said, or some other phrase that gives attribution to the source. And then after you do that, you would put a direct quote in quotation marks and use your quo, pair, punc at the end of that. Your evidence from the text would be you use quotation marks if you use direct quote from the text, exact word for word. But also if you paraphrase it or use an indirect quotation, you don't use the quotation marks, but they still need a citation. Your citation will come at the end, and it will be the page number that you got that information from, in case your reader wants to go back and look at the essay on that page to see what it is that you have done in context. Then after you do that, the evidence needs your commentary explaining its significance. And quite a bit of the essay is going to come from this, your own explanation. Remember ICE, introduce it, cite it, and explain it. You should never end with a quotation. You should always explain it. And don't assume that the reader is going to know what you're thinking. Remember that the reader very well may not make the connections that you're making because the reader has not read and has not had the background on it that you do. After you get your body paragraphs done, then you are ready for your conclusion, restatement of your thesis, not word for word, but something that means the same thing, and then remind your reader of the rhetorical devices that you've talked about in your body paragraphs, and then end with a broad general statement that possibly reminds the reader of the hook that you began with. It doesn't necessarily have to, but it could. And then down here at the end of this document, I have given you works cited for something from our collection of essays, from something from Rereading America. The only thing that you would do is change the author, the title, and the page numbers, but the rest of this would be exactly the same. So that's how to write it. Once you have written your rough draft, then you want to go back and look at how to revise it, because the first draft is just that. It's just the first draft, and it's a rough draft. So it can be very rough, but then you need to start working on it some more. Here's my sample essay here in this document. I use Cindy Lou Who as my writer here. And so you see on the first page, it's Who 1, and it'll be Who 2, Who 3 as we go through. There's the heading that goes on the first page. And of course, this English 111 section H21G is not your section number, so you can change that to your section number. As long as you have English 111, it'll be fine. Your title goes right on the next line, centered, using rhetorical devices to establish effectiveness and how to do gender. That's what I titled it. And then here is my essay written just as I showed you how to do it. Here is my hook. An old saying describes little boys as being made of snip snails and puppy dog tails, and little girls as being made of sugar, spice, and everything nice. Not every little girl matches that description, and neither does every little boy. In fact, according to the authors of How to Do Gender, people do gender as they are taught and as they wish to express themselves. According to the biographical information preceding their essay, and see, this is the same thing that I put in the document teaching you how to write this essay. And so there's my summary. So I have connected my hook by a couple of sentences to get it down to the summary. Once I've given the summary, then I end with the thesis statement. Here's my thesis statement highlighted here. In order to effectively demonstrate their point that gender roles are flexible, the authors use the rhetorical devices of anecdote, definitions, and historical facts. See, that's where I'm looking for your thesis statement when I look at your rough draft, the very last sentence of the introductory paragraph. And then you'll start with your body paragraphs using an introductory word, a transitional device here. One rhetorical device that Ferry and Wade used to demonstrate the flexibility of gender is anecdote. Notice you need to tell the reader of your essay that what the author's full name is and the title of the essay in the introduction paragraph. After you tell the full name, you can just use the author's last name. Do not call the author by the first name, because you're not a personal friend of the author. You're just going to refer to it in any kind of academic essay as by the last name. So my sample here has two authors, so Ferry and Wade is what I keep referring to them, but you would just use the last name of your author. And then I show you how after I said anecdote, then I gave a little definition. An anecdote is a short story that is told to illustrate a point. That's my definition. So follow this pattern. Topic sentence, naming your rhetorical device, definition, and then examples, textual evidence from the text of the essay that you're talking about. They begin their essay with the story of a little boy who wore barrettes to school only to be criticized by another boy who called him a girl. And notice, even though I did not get the exact words from the text, I paraphrased it, I still have to cite it. So here's my parentheses around the page number and the period after the parentheses. Okay, I'm not going to read this to you. You can read it. When I get through talking about anecdote, I'm going on here to the rhetorical device of definition, which is the explanation of a term that will be used in the essay, serves to keep the reader's understanding of terms that are used throughout. And so then I give some examples from the text where they talk about the definition of doing gender and gender rules. And then I comment on it after I put it in the paragraph. And then here's my last body paragraph. A third equally effective rhetorical device that the authors use is historical fact, as they describe the evolution of earrings in American society. And then I go on to explain what they were talking about, based on back to the 1920s to the present time, about the significance of wearing earrings, not wearing earrings, which side was pierced, and so forth. And so after I give the textual evidence, then I comment on it and I end it. When I get to the end of my body paragraphs, all right, I'm ready to end the essay. So I have the conclusion here. Thus, Ferry and Wade use rhetorical devices to make their point that gender rules are flexible. That's not the exact words of my thesis, but it's very close, and it's just to remind the reader I've been rambling on with all these paragraphs, and now just to remind the reader the point that I was trying to make. And then you need to remind the readers of the rhetorical devices themselves, and then you need to broaden it out until you end with something. And so I ended with a reference back to my quotation about snips and snails, and then I'm finished with my document. Insert a page break when you get to the end of your last paragraph, your conclusion, and that will automatically take you to another page. Here I am with who for, the work cited, and here is the actual citation in hanging indent. This is called a hanging indent, where the author's name sticks out there. And so you need to just use this pattern and substitute your author's name here, substitute your title here in quotation marks. Titles always go in quotation marks. And then the rest of it is the same until you get to the page numbers here. And then you put your page numbers in there. So, so you have a document that tells you how to write it. Then you have a sample of what one looks like. So then you just need to pick one of these and start writing. So when should a child be taken from his parents? McFarquhar is what you will call Larissa McFarquhar. Notice she starts with a question. What should you do if Child Protective Services comes to your house? She starts with a rhetorical question. That is a rhetorical device. And you need to explain what a rhetorical device is and comment on what significance it has to her making her point. And so what she does is she uses the rhetorical device, to get our attention. I don't know what I would do if Child Protective Services came to my home. It's called a rhetorical question because she doesn't really expect you to answer it. She just wants to get your attention, get you thinking about it. And then look what she does. She goes on with description. You'll hear a knock on the door, often late at night. You don't have to open it, but if you don't, the caseworker outside may come back with the police. And so she tells, she starts in with this description, which is another rhetorical device. Okay, so that's what we're looking for as we look through, as we read through these, whichever one you choose, just choose one. And you're looking for rhetorical devices. And so, in other words, you're not writing your essay about what she wrote, you're writing it about how she wrote it. And the rhetorical devices are what makes the essay work or makes it effective. Let's take a look at serving in Florida. She starts here with picture a fat person's hell. And I don't mean a place with no food. Instead, there's everything you might eat if eating had no bodily consequences. The cheese fries, the chicken fried steaks, the fudge-laden desserts. Needs a space in it there. Only here, every bite must be paid for, one way or another, in human discomfort. What is she doing? She's describing, and she does a very good description here. She also, look here, the kitchen is a cavern, a stomach leading to the lower intestine, that is the garbage and dishwashing area. That's metaphor. She is comparing this place called Jerry's that she works in with this very disgusting description of it's a cavernous stomach leading down to the intestine. Okay, so, and she uses other things in here to convince you also and to make the writing more effective, to make her point. And her point is that it's very hard to make ends meet, to pay your rent and your lights and keep gas in your car when you're working these low-paying jobs like waitressing and the other things that she mentions in here. So again, it's not what she's writing, it's how she's making it effective for you. And I think that description is just awesome. All right, and then we have the third choice is education, attentional disarray. Just look at it and see what it is that they're writing about. What they're writing about is how We think we can handle doing several things at once, multitasking, but she brings in a lot of information to convince us that we're not paying as much attention as we think we are. So she starts out here at MIT. I teach a seminar on science, technology, and memoir. Enrollment is capped at 20 students. The atmosphere is intimate. We read memoirs by scientists, engineers, and designers. And then the students tell their own stories. Well, she starts here. What is she doing? She is establishing her authority, first of all, at MIT. I teach a seminar on science. That's establishing her authority, which is a form of getting us involved with her credentials, her right to speak on this, which we call ethos. She's establishing her ethical authority here. And then she starts to tell about some of the stories here. Telling stories is anecdote, and so that's something that you can talk about too. So remember, when you're reading your essays, the ones that you're going to write about, the one that you are going to write about, you're looking for rhetorical devices and how the author uses those to make the essay more effective. After you get through with your rough draft, and like I said, it can be very rough, I want you to look at this document right here. It's called, nope, that's the wrong one. That's how to write the rhetorical analysis. Let me get back to the one that says the outline. Well, actually, oh, here it is. It's up here. The rhetorical analysis outline and revision. Write your rough draft, get it into some kind of rough shape that looks like an essay and that's talking about the rhetorical devices. Then go back and pull up this document and follow my directions. Look at your rough draft, go through it sentence by sentence to see if it's organized the way it should be. Start with your introduction. I put in here, again, hook, 2 to 3 sentences that mention the author and the title of the essay, a little summary of the essay, and then all the way down to your thesis. In her essay, blank, author's last name, effectively makes her point that, whatever her point is, by using the rhetorical devices of blank, blank, and blank. So remember, for however many rhetorical devices you use, you need to have a separate body paragraph. And I go through step by step. Here's what the body paragraph should have. This is how you punctuate it. This is how you comment on it. And I do that all the way through to the conclusion and the works cited page and the formatting. Now, eventually, you'll get it to the point where it says what you want it to say, and then you edit it and look for spelling errors, words that you left out, a thought that's not complete, things like that. You'll look for those at the very end. But just get your rough draft shaped up better, do some revision on it, and then I want you to submit that rough draft to me. So I'm going to give you some feedback on it, and I also want you to submit it to Smart Thinking. There is a document on the Moodle page that shows you how to do that, and when you submit it to Smart Thinking, a paragraph right here is the description you need to put in so that the Smart Thinking tutors will know what you're supposed to be doing, because they won't know. It asks you for a description of your assignment, and I wrote out a description for your assignment right here, so all you have to do is plug that in. On the Moodle page, here is the Smart Thinking link. Be sure to go through Smart Thinking this way. If you don't do it that way and just go to Smart Thinking and try to do it, they'll make you set up an account, and they'll charge you money for it, but it's already paid for by Nash, so click on it and go through it this way. And then here is the graded assignment for this week. The graded assignment is to submit your rough draft for me. And again, I'm looking for the introductory paragraph, the thesis statement, the body paragraphs, topic sentences, the conclusion, and that it's in correct MLA format. Also work on your inquisitives that are due. So if you have any questions about this as you're working on it this week, please contact me and get help. You can, if you're close enough to campus and have time, you can go to the English Studio and get help there. If you go to the English Studio, go with your rough draft and the assignment document and that document that tells you how to write it and how to revise it, because they're not going to know how to help you either if you don't tell them, if you don't show them what it is I'm looking for, so they won't know. Otherwise, the Smart Thinking is provided for you to get help if you can't be on campus, and I know some of you don't even live in this area. So contact me, do the best you can with this, and you'll have one more week after this to continue to revise it and submit your final for a grade. All right, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time.